Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, we have talked before about lake trout and brook trout. And in an earlier report this week, I talked about the lake trout fishing that exists, and one of the ways to fish them is with a hand line. But I want you to be aware that we have bodies of water right around us that have lake trout. If the lake is deep enough, if the water temperature can be kept at that temperature that they take comfort and actually sustenance in, then there can be populations of lake trout. And there are natural populations. We're not stocking them anyplace, but I want to name a few. One of them is Millsite Lake. That's in Jefferson County. Another lake that really is wonderful is Trout Lake and Sylvia Lake. Now, Sylvia Lake is over near Governor. Sylvia Lake has a maximum depth of 140 feet. That's deep. That's deep. And Trout Lake, I think the maximum depth is 110 feet. And I can't really tell you about Millsite other than I have caught a number of trout out of Millsite in the past, and I could tell you exactly where to go. It's again, finding that deep water and then putting something down there that they're going to hit. But we talked about, in another report, we talked about hand lining, pulling copper for a lake trout. But one of the things that's been discovered over the last, say, decade or more, I know some people did it way in the past, but it's vertical fishing for lake trout. In other words, you go to any body of water that has lake trout, you find that deep water section. Now remember, temperature is what's really controlling all this. Lake trout prefer a water temperature range of, at the very bottom, 48 degrees, and say at the top of about 60 degrees. They're going to be in that range. So if you can find the right depth, and which will have the right temperature, water temperature, then if you just take one of the baits that you use for trout or for bass or whatever, any like soft plastic paddle tail or swim bait type of thing, bucktail jig, another example, and drop it straight down to the bottom. You find that range, then drop it straight down to the bottom. You're not moving your boat around. You're not doing a lateral moving type of presentation like trolling would be, where the lake trout, if it sees it, it's going to have to follow it and decide whether it's going to hit it. In this case, you're just dropping it right down to the fish. But then don't start moving it and jigging it, because that often turns them off. Just start reeling it straight up. Just straight up. I know it sounds crazy, but this really works. And those fish will start following it, and they may follow it all the way to the upper range of water and finally hit it. But this is one of the best ways to catch lake trout. And lake trout, this time of the year, they're going to be fantastic. They fight. When they fight, they almost go in circles sometimes. You can feel that circular head shake that they do. Every fish is different, and you can feel the difference if you fish enough. But lake trout get a bad reputation because normally the way they're caught is trolling at a fairly, well, you basically troll at a slower speed than you would for trout or salmon. But, and remember, lake trout aren't really a trout. They're a char, just as brook trout are. But this way, they don't have to follow. This way, it can come right down to them. And boy, you'll have a great fight. You really will. The reason a lot of times lake trout are not seen as a great fighter is they're being dragged in. The charter captains don't stop the boat. So they're being dragged. And unless you got a massive fish, you're not going to get as big a fight. But I've caught lake trout all over northern Canada, and they were always one of my favorite because of how they fought. So this is another tip. This is a good time of year. I gave you 3 lakes. There's others. There's Lake of the Woods has lake trout. And there's a lot of lakes around us that we might not even realize have lake trout. But it has to be deep water. They won't exist in a shallow lake. They just can't. Temperature isn't right, they'll die off. It's something that I think we can look forward to now that it's fall, and it's just another way and place to go fishing. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.